Mike Weaver, thank you so much for hanging out today, man.
Dude, I'm telling you, I've been so excited about this, and I don't really get excited about doing podcasts. You know what I mean? I just want to be honest with that. So everybody else who I've been on their podcast, sorry about that or whatever, but it's like, so you called and dude, you gave me the option. You're like, dude, you can do it from your house because we've got like the tech to do that or whatever.
Right.
And you're like, or you could come over here and we could share in an ice cold Coke Zero. And that's a love language, and also my blood type is Coke Zero.
Right.
And so, but I've never been treated so well as that they were served up in a glass bottle.
It takes one to know one, because Coke Zero is my drug of choice, and I've already had mine. And then my family brought me coffee from Fainting Goat. But
you have a sweet family too, man.
Oh.
Dude, your kids are awesome, man. Really cool, dude. So,
man, it's all Kristen.
Thank the Lord. I have that same testimony, bro.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's all their mama. Thank Jesus they look more like their mama. Thank Jesus that they act more like their mama. All of that.
100.
Yeah. Thank God. Cheers. Cheers to godly wives.
Yes.
In Jesus' name. Yeah.
Dude, I've been looking forward to this just for the hang.
And likewise, man. I mean, in the last just few years, I have just, as far as getting to write songs, as far as getting to hear songs that are coming out, man, you have been doing some of my favorite stuff, dude. And just easy like this, it's hard, it's difficult to get things done though, because the hang is just such a great chill hang that we could talk about whatever for hours. So this is going to be a 5.5 hour podcast, and we may get to some questions or something. You know what I mean?
It'll just be Dumb and Dumber quotes and Tommy Boy. Yeah,
exactly. It's like you operate on the same 8th grade level that I operate. Well, that's what I love about it.
It's probably a bad thing and probably just a poor reflection on me as a dad, but when me and my 12-year-old hang out, it feels like we're peers. I mean, I just feel like
that's what I say to my son too.
I mean,
my son Zeke, I was like, did we just become best friends right now? This was like, that's exactly it.
So good to be with you. Actually, we were talking right before we started recording just about, you've been back on the road recently, out with Ben Fuller, and
man,
and I said pause because we need to talk about that.
You know what, man, for me, all of the things we could possibly talk about, the music, the creation of the music, when we first started, so Big Daddy Weave has been together for 25 years now. And it's like, I never thought those words would come out of my mouth with a name of our group like Big Daddy Weave. You're like, this is destined for failure just from, the name of it, right? And so, but the grace of God is real. That's all I got to say. And, I remember being in college, and to me, it was more about the music then. It was always about having a heart of worship and of having the songs were written out of like relationship with God and stuff. But to me, I really loved the studio more. I loved playing more. I loved the musical side of it more. But over time, I think it is kind of morphed into just a means to get to what Jesus wants to do in any given room. You have to do so many things surrounding the music that really have nothing to do with the music. And to me, if the goal is to see what Jesus wants to do with it, then it's easier to stomach all of the other things that are not my favorite things that we have to do to get there. Do you know what I mean? And it's none of it's like terrible or whatever, but it's like, it's just the very, check off the list things that you have to do.
What are a few of those things that aren't your favorite?
Oh man, like obligatory kind of visits to things and places, and you gotta, shake hands and kiss babies and all of that kind of stuff. And at first I felt like there was a grace for that in my life, but I don't know if I'm just getting like older and more crotchety or whatever, but it's like, if there's this superficial feeling element to it, I just don't want to do that, you know? And so, I kind of steer clear from some of that if I can. And
understandable.
Yeah, I didn't know I could say no to some of that, and so now I do, and I'd rather be at home with my fam and then getting right to the ministry part, which is what you were asking about. And dude, I'm telling you, so in our life, we went through some years, literally experienced a burnout from some of these other, like having to fill in the blank kinds of things, like what we're talking about, when you have to go make the visits and you have to do the things and like check off the boxes on the list. And we found ourselves, operating from a deficit. We were empty. And if you're not operating out of the overflow of Jesus in your life, you're going to burn out real fast, And so we did. And we were kind of looking for a way out, you know? And that's when Jesus stepped in and just kind of brought revival to us. And we just started stopping our shows and just started praying for people. And then, man, every night became an adventure in Jesus. And for about 7 years, we just saw Jesus move in power every night. I would go to bed exhausted and I would wake up going, man, I wonder what Jesus is going to do today, you know?
Mm.
And then after that 7 years, we went through another 7 years where my family dealt with a bunch of loss. My little brother, who was kind of my partner in crime and in ministry, he was sort of the hub in the middle of the wheel in the organization of Big Daddy Weave, leading the charge in ministry, man. He passed away and that broke me.
Mm.
And then the next 7 years that we had, which his death came about in the middle of it. My dad, who's my hero, passed. My mom, who was his amen corner and kind of dealt with a lot of office things for Big Daddy Weave. And then my brother passed, all within about 5 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's been about 3 years now since Jay went to heaven. And honestly, from the beginning of when my dad passed until just the end of last year, man, my heart was just broken. And there's nothing worse than having to go and to share hope and share life with people when you're not really experiencing that. Like, I mean, I trust that Jesus was taking care of it, but I was living out of a broken heart, man. And so we ran into a friend who wasn't a friend then. We just found out that we were going to tour together. A dude named Ben Fuller. Man, it's going real well for him right now. He's only about 5 years old in Jesus. And I ran into him at an industry event and was really trying to get out of there because I just didn't want to be there. And he saw me before I could get out of the building and he hugged me. And when he hugged me, Jesus did something. Like, I had this almost kind of this experience where I felt like I was hugging me from another time. And I remembered this time when the Lord had the fire, that purity, man, the fire of heaven, man, in my heart, you know?
Mm.
And I realized that's what I was hugging in that moment. And it led to a series of events later that week where literally I feel like sitting on my RV praying with a friend, it was like Jesus reached into my chest and took out my broken heart and he gave me a brand new heart, man.
Okay.
And so I didn't really realize what that meant until we got out on the road. And Ben is just, I'm telling you, he's a walking revival right now, man. And that season that I spoke of where we were just seeing God move every single day, it's like he just rekindled the thing from that season in this new season. So we had 7 really awesome years, 7 really rough years. And I think now we just started a brand new 7 years. I don't know what that means except for just that it's a new season. And man, God's just doing things every night. The other night, man, I literally witnessed this. There's a young man in New Mexico who came through the meet and greet line before the show, and he just had this heavy thing on him. And I believe it was the spirit of suicide, you know? And I watched Ben Fuller come off the front of the stage, you know, we had just finished singing a song together. And then I turned to like fist bump him, but he was gone, dude. He jumped off the front of the stage and was hugging this kid who did not want to be hugged at that moment, by the way. But literally, this kid's face was just pale white. It's like he was already dead or whatever, you know?
Wow.
And Ben hugged that kid and just started saying this in his ear. He just started saying, "You're going to live, dude. You're going to live. You're going to live." And I watched Jesus put color back in that guy's face, man. And it was so awesome, man. Every night has been something like that. We see the Lord move in a special way. And it feels like the music, so all the stuff that goes with making the music, all the way to even just playing the music, is just a means for getting to these moments that Jesus has kind of appointed in these different rooms, you know? And so I thought that we were just too old, and I thought that my heart was just too broken. I thought we were just over it, but the Lord has just begun a new thing in us, man. And so
Yeah,
praise
I'm
God.
so glad you went there. I was going to ask you about music and ministry and career and all that later on, but let's just stick there right now. But while we're on this topic of like shows and ministry, seems like Big Daddy shows often feel more like ministry than entertainment, you know, which is always just an interesting thing to try to
Mm,
talk about or think about or dissect. And I
mhm,
hear
mhm.
so many different comments
Mm.
about is this ministry or entertainment or both? Is
Yeah.
one less important than the other? All this
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But where does that come from for you?
Yeah. I just think that the Lord can use all of it, And I think that it's when the Bible talks about us just doing whatever we do as unto the Lord, I think that's just the way it plays itself out in our lives, because that's the way that Jesus just really brought life and like a sense of like newness and a sense of purpose to us in it. I think there's other people who literally, I mean, they can bring the artistic side of what they do. And it's just like, I've been watching the show House of David. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that or whatever,
Oh,
but
yeah.
dude, and it's like the anointing was on David whenever he just played, he wasn't preaching or anything. He's just, whenever he would play, because of the anointing on his life, like, it would calm that thing that was on Saul, and I've seen people play that way, and they have just like literally when they just
Mhm.
bring the art that they bring, I've seen the Lord just use that and minister to people in a powerful way. For us, it just seems like that it's been as much about what we get to share during the show as it is about what we get to sing. And those two things kind of work together, And
Yeah.
then having a moment where we just sort of take a step back and just say, God, we just want you to come into the room and do something that only you can do. And it has maybe even nothing to do with what's going on up on stage right now, that like, the people in this room and you want to do something in their life that they need. And if you accomplish that, we're going to realize that's so much bigger than anything we did up here. And that's the I don't need a room full of people to respond to that, but when I see the one guy's face who came in with the kind of like, I call it the stank face, he's got kind of the, I don't want to be here look, and I see Jesus change that guy's face. Oh man, that's all it takes for me to have had a good night. You know what I mean?
Do
'Cause
you have a moment like that in your mind that you think of
oh
that
man,
sticks with you over the years?
what? Yes, dude. There's a bunch of them, and it's a bunch of different rooms, but it's like literally, you don't even necessarily know what God is doing, but I know what it looks like when he does it. Do you know what I mean? That's my favorite thing now is I feel like I was always so tied to like playing guitar and singing and all that stuff. In the last few years, I've just sort of laid down playing guitar. I almost stand on like the edge of the stage because I want to see every person's face that I can. And even just like we're sitting here right now and having this exchange, and part of it is verbal, but part of it's just in our faces. I see the Lord do stuff in that every night, man. I also see it make people like nervous because they know I'm looking at them, And I think that's why when I have a guitar and I'm having to be behind like a microphone stand, if I could just take the wireless mic and just sort of be out in their space in a way, when I'm looking at them and I'm moving around, I kind of pace back and forth because it's like I'm looking for that one man that it's like he's got the the downtrodden thing on him, and then by the end of it, it's tears. It could look different ways, you know what I mean? But you see like a physical like effect like happening, and you just know that the Lord's doing it, man.
Man,
And
how ironic is it? Typically, you would expect an audience to be on the edge of their seat because of what's happening on stage,
yeah,
and to have the person on stage on the
yeah.
edge of his seat.
Yeah. Well, I want to see what Jesus is doing.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I think that a long time in my life, I didn't feel like I have anything to offer. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to say this for a long time, but when I would just compare myself to other people, and I would always be like, well, man, I wish I could do what they did, because I would always discount anything about me that maybe God wanted to do something with, like
Mhm.
I couldn't see that. And really,
Hmm.
I was wishing that we had some kind of big story of how we could do something really great for God. You know what I mean? And then I think what happened over time though is realizing that the only thing I have to bring to God is my inability in a way. It's like, I mean, that whole I feel less than, that whole like I'm not good enough is valid in a way, in that like he wants to use my availability to him to show up in the space where I'm not good enough, And how we take on like what we're good at or what we're not good at usually comes from comparing ourselves with other people,
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's a terrible place to live. But if you compare yourself with God, all we have is weakness, you know? I mean, he says, in your weakness, my strength is made perfect, right? And so I start trying to go like, well, where am I strong and where am I weak? Well, maybe I'm better than this, than that guy or whatever. And he's going, no, 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 look up here. And if I compare my strengths and weaknesses with what God has, all I have is weakness. So all I become is an opportunity for Jesus to show up greater than my weakness, you know, his strength to be made perfect in my weakness. My whole life becomes that if I can see that. And I see that sometimes, right? But he's willing to meet us at that place all the time because he's not looking for gold or silver vessels. He's looking for yielded vessels, you know? We're looking for that person out there. I'm looking for what the Lord wants to do because I really believe they're out there. I've been seeing it too long. And man, to be in a season when that is rekindled in us, man, is refreshing to me, man. Yeah.
It's interesting you're talking about this thing of just sitting before him and having nothing. And in my life, I've experienced this, I don't know, vacillation between real humility and false humility, I guess.
Yeah,
and this
dude.
is probably oversharing, but the last year and a half, as my wife's been dealing with a lot of health stuff,
Yes.
it's put me in a time of having to deal with a lot of stuff inside that I just kind of stuffed. And so
Yeah.
it's been a year of therapy. And one of the things that's come out is my relationship to shame. And so there's this author, Chip Dodd, and actually I love my church Conduit. I didn't mean to shout out Conduit, but I love you guys because our worship pastor, Jason, he makes it a requirement that if you're going to be on the worship team, which I'm a volunteer for the first time since I was 19, it's been such a blessing to be. But if you're going to be on the team, you have to go to one of these events that there's only 2 a year called Heart Health. It's actually been a gift to me because most of my life, it's been more about what I should feel. And anything else, I just kind of tend to stuff in the background.
Yes.
So anyways, fast forward to this realization of shame. Now he has this chart where right down the middle, it's like the 8 core emotions. One of them is shame. But here's the interesting thing. And if you're listening on audio and not video, if you go to the right of this chart, it shows what's the need. What's your need? If you're feeling shame, what's the need? The need is attunement. And that just means something like if someone's saying like, I feel like this, rather than being like, well, you know, you want to just fix it. Well, you know, if you could do this, this, and this. Attunement looks like, oh, that must be really hard to feel that. And what's interesting is once you've received attunement, the gift is humility. So it's almost like I feel this shame because of A, B, and C. But once I receive understanding and someone attuning to that of like, oh, that must be because of this, this, and this, then I go into a true form of humility of realizing, oh, I'm actually really inadequate in a lot of ways.
Wow, dude.
Now, the crazy life hack that I've experienced, and I know this is like such a left turn for a second, but the life hack I've experienced, and there's been a lot of freedom for me, has been, God, I feel shame about this, and allowing him to meet me there and bring attunement.
That's so good, dude.
And then it brings humility.
It's so good though, man. Because, you know, usually shame, it kind of takes us out of that relationship with him in a way. Because that's how I want to do. I want to grab the fig leaves and, you know, and go cover up. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Out, cover up, all
You're
that.
so right, man. To realize that God is with us, man. He just receives us just how we are, you know, and just the fact that he would come and address that thing in that place of need. And aren't you just so glad that's who he is, man?
Yeah.
There's nothing in the rule books that says the creator of the universe has to be who he is, you know? Because I mean, he could be this whole separated, like, you know, finger pointing, like ready to stomp you out, you know, guy, have nothing to do with you and have every right because he's God. He makes the rules, you know? Yeah. But man, he is, I mean, he has to be great and mighty and all powerful and all of that stuff, but it doesn't have to be loving and kind and gentle want to draw us close. And I'm so thankful for who he is, man. That's beautiful.
And for me, I came from a really legalistic kind of environment originally.
Dude.
And so the voice in my head, I always thought was him. That voice of like, you better not lie and not ask forgiveness before I come back.
Yes.
You know.
and it really was like religion talking, right? Yeah. It's like, yeah.
And it's been such a relief for me to discover that he died so that I could sit with him and tell him how I'm actually doing.
Man, isn't that so wonderful, man? That is so wonderful, you know? I love that he wants to know. I mean, he already does know. But he wants to hear it from me too. I can't even believe that. Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's who he is. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, do you remember the moment you realized Big Daddy Weave was becoming a thing?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
remember that moment?
it's like we never really had it. We were never trying to put together a thing really. But so 1998, we were all in college together on campus of University of Mobile in little Mobile, Alabama, where that's how they say it down there. And man, we just put together a jam because we loved playing. Like Dave Matthews was a thing back then. And so I mean, he still is today. He's great. I love it. But I didn't think to say like Dave Matthews has passed on to the other world or whatever now. But man, there was a sax player in my music theory class, and I was writing some of these songs that were sort of like Dave Matthews flavored or something. And I was like, dude, I heard you're a sax player and you want to jam, dude? He's like, well, I'm living with a drummer, He's like, I can bring him along. I'm like, great. I'm like, my brother's a bass player. Let's get together on campus. And so we're just having a great time playing, man. It was so much fun because, in my church, we didn't have any other musicians that were like these guys or whatever, that I was running into on campus. And all these guys are music students and they're all sort of in a similar place in their life. And so we put together this jam session. I was like, I'm just having a blast. Somebody comes up with a riff and we could play that for an hour, you know what I mean? Just loving playing music and the way that it feels and playing together and all of that stuff. But 15 minutes into the first jam that we ever had, somebody wanders by. We were playing in one of the big halls in the campus and they're like, dude, we got this group coming in a few weeks across campus. You guys should put together a set and open up for them. And we're like, dude, we only been together for 15 minutes jamming. We didn't know it was a thing yet. We already got our first gig. Things are looking up and completely accidentally, you know what I mean? And so they said, well, what do you want us to put on the flyer? And that's the point. We could have just prayed and we could have come up with some great name or whatever, but we were just kidding around. And we said, tell them that we're Big Daddy Weave and the Institution. And we were just being stupid. It was never supposed to go beyond this one thing. And the moral of that story is be careful what you call your group because 25 years later, you could be on somebody's podcast drinking Coke Zero and telling it for the,
So what happened to the Institution?
Well, the label didn't like it. The label didn't like Big Daddy Weave. So we played, they didn't like any of it. Then, so we kept playing. It was like, so when we played at that event that they invited us to, somebody at that event was like, dude, we saw you play at the such and such. Will you come play at our whatever? Okay. It's like, that's literally how it happened. Okay. And then when we played at that one, like 2 more people were like, well, we saw you play at the such and such. And that's, when we started playing these other events, we're like, I think this is is this a thing? Is what we were asking each other because we never set out for it to be a thing. And then we also had a bunch of friends who were like chasing the dream, We saw them almost starve doing that. And we're like, well, that's no good. So we literally stopped when we thought it might be becoming a thing. And we just said, Jesus, if this is a thing, we want it to be your thing. And we want you to prove to us that it's your thing. We're not going to call anybody to ask them to let us come play. If you provide the places for us to play, then we'll go and play them. So our 3rd year together, still jamming and worshiping and all the different things. We started leading worship on campus and different little things like that. And the 3rd year together, we didn't make one single outgoing phone call and we played 180 dates. And like my mom, we called her Mama Weave. She would literally have to start taking the phone calls because we were just going to play all of these events. University of Mobile is a campus. It's a good, safe little Baptist campus, lots of ministry students that were coming out of there and taking assignments at different churches. And then we'd get those invitations to come and play at all kinds of stuff, until literally here we are all this time later. When we started, we made an independent record together. I had some friends really support us in that and opened up their studio to us. And our guitar player, Jeremy, has produced all of our records and just a talented young man. And I think it really sort of afforded him the opportunity to learn how to do all that. He's kind of learned how to do it over the years. And when we made this little independent record, there was a site called grassrootsmusic.com. So this is before the day of like a bunch of downloads and stuff like that. It was just as all that was starting, you remember Napster and all of that business that was back in the day. So, but then they would sell these indie CDs like on their site, grassrootsmusic.com, independent bands. And that's how our friends from Fervent Records found us. Like we had then several record labels contact us we looked at record contracts and it looked absolutely terrifying to us. I mean, like, it's like, I don't think there's anywhere else, even to this day, where that kind of a agreement in business would be accepted. You know what I mean? It's like, that is a fairly, one-sided way, but it is a way to go forward. So when everybody would call, we would literally tell them no, because those contracts looked foolish to us, as far as, we're not businessmen, but it was like, we're like, this makes no way, dude. I'm not giving you all of that of this. And then the last group, the last label who had called Little Fervent Records, I thought it was made up. It sounded like this is in somebody's garage. You know what I mean? Is what it sounded like to me. But when I hung up on the phone telling them that we weren't going to go with them, I was troubled in my heart. And I knew I had missed it because, the peace of God guards our hearts. It talks about in Philippians, when we bring everything to him with prayer and thanksgiving, you're right, then his peace guards our heart. And so when I said no and I hung up, said, thank you very much, I knew I had missed it, man, So I called the other guys. I'm like, I'm troubled over telling these people no. I think we missed it. And so we had just been out with Mercy Me. Mercy Me was an indie band at that time also. And to us, man, they had a bus, they had insurance, they had all of these things. We're like, dude, they're the king of the hill or whatever, right? It's like they're doing it, man. This is a legitimate operation for them. And so then I heard that Bart and those guys had signed a record deal. I'm like, Bart, why would you agree to that? You know what I mean? And he goes, oh, wait. He goes, wait till you have to sign a management contract. He's like, that's even scarier and makes even less sense. But he's like, that's the way we're going. And then he actually gave a character reference for Rod and Susan Riley, who started Fervent Records. And it just it all began to make sense that the Lord was leading us this way. And so then when we agreed and signed with them, then they're kind of like, man, are you sure this name Big Daddy Weave it's not good. You know what I mean? It's not, I think that's going to alienate you from a lot of people. Big Daddy Weave in the institution, like, what the heck, dude, And so we just said to them, we're like, well, if you can come up with something better that suits us more, then we'll call it that. And they sent a bunch of names to it. It just didn't work out. And so they said, well, the institution part is a little bit confusing. And so, we dropped that, and we've been Big Daddy Weave ever since.
I wonder if there's ever been a band called The Institution. It feels.
Oh yeah, I wonder.
It feels right.
It does.
It's like a band name.
I think it worked together in a weird way. Big Daddy Weave and The Institution.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, it's like God can use the foolish things to confound the wise or whatever. So maybe that's what he's still doing with us.
Yeah. So signed with Fervent, and then the rest is history. You guys have consistently written songs that connect with Christian radio. How do you approach writing for that space without chasing trends?
Dude, that's an awesome question, Sam. We just write what comes out. You know what I mean? And then we hopefully, you can usually hear a little bit of what we've been listening to also, kind of like in the production of whatever it is. It's like, I don't know, I like this one song and I like this, and it becomes kind of like the palette or whatever that we're using to paint with. I don't know that we've ever chased something like that, but I think after you've been in this world for a little bit, the Christian music world, which that is a regret of mine, is sometimes a lot of it just all starts to sound kind of the same a little bit, doesn't it? You know what I mean? That's a complaint that I hear from like the outside listener often, is kind of like, well, man, it all starts to sound just the same, because people do start to shoot for that. Well, is it going to work at radio? Is it going to, and, I guess we have that in the back of our minds, but I don't know that we make decisions just based on that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Maybe walk through what a typical songwriting session looks like for you guys. Like, what do you start with? And maybe whose role is what in the band and all that.
Sure. And I end up as the songwriter for most of the stuff. And then every now and again, we'll bring something together, and like the input, usually their input comes more on the production side. It's like, so after I have a batch of songs, like I'll bring to them. That's a little bit how it's been from the beginning. Some of those songs in the beginning would come from the kind of jam session thing that we have. But usually it was kind of taking a song that was already written and us kind of creating a vibe around that, So it's a song that was already there. Now it's making it what Big Daddy Weave is, as the guys from Big Daddy Weave get to put their their flavor
Oh,
or
right.
whatever in or whatever. But as far as the writing process goes, it can go a number of ways. And I think you experience this all the time too, because it could be this little riff that's in your head, that's a melody. It could be a riff that is what sets the feeling of the song, and then you kind of write to that bed of music. Or it could be like, man, there was a couple on this last record where I sat up on the edge of the bed at 3:30 in the morning. I just wrote an entire thing down, and it just came out that way. So all kinds of different ways. It tends to, from a meaning standpoint, from a lyric standpoint, though, come from whatever we've been living. And when we share from that place, we find that resonates with people. It was kind of like your question about how does it work at radio. I think it's just trying to write things that it may feel like it's just about you, but really we all have in common. You know what I mean?
Has there been a time when there was a tension between staying true to the message and doing what works?
I think from a message standpoint, not so much. I do think that the way I see it is, and this is one of the frustrating things to me was, so some years ago we had a song called "Every Time I Breathe," which was to that point, as this maybe like 2005 or something. To that point was like the most accepted song that we had as far as from an industry standpoint. And I remember when, in making the next record, what some friends from the label had said is they're like, well, what we need is another "Every Time I Breathe." And I'm like going, when we brought you "Every Time I Breathe," you didn't know "Every Time I Breathe" was "Every Time I Breathe." That is, I think, my least favorite part of the music industry. And I get it because many of their jobs rely on it turning into numbers of some kind.
Mm.
And it has never been that for us. We love when that happens, but we realize we can't make that happen. And if you can, you probably already have lost something anyway. You know what I mean? I love when it translates into numbers because every one of those numbers represents a person. And I think that's awesome, but it's so easy to become disassociated from the heart of it just because you want something that works. And when you quantify what works, it means there's something that's measurable in numbers, which I don't know that is what the Lord thinks about it, because the Lord would leave 99 for one. I remember, I remember this when we first were on a larger tour, because Big Daddy, we have played the byways, not as much the highways. You get there with a highway, then you turn off the beaten path. You know what I mean? And I love that. I love small town America. I love real people. And I feel like, man, that's who our people are, is just like real salt of the earth, that we're in the same place. We'll share about what's hurting us, and we'll be in it together and ask Jesus to come and do something in our lives. We went out once with Chris Tomlin, who is like one of our heroes, dude. We sing all those songs in church, and we have watched him just blow up into the most sung artist in the entire world, and all of this kind of stuff. And we were invited on that tour, but that was a lot different than what we were used to playing, man. Because like I said, we're playing the backwoods places. We're playing the small town places. We went there, and I remember standing in Oklahoma. It was night one of that tour, and there's 7,000 or 8,000 people there or something. We played nights where there are large things at festivals and things like that. But I remember looking out and just feeling I don't know that I can have that thing that we were accustomed to having, looking for that one guy,
Sure.
And I'm like, God, I don't know if I can do this or not. And he says this thing to me. He says, well, how do you count to 8,000 or whatever, right? And it's like he wanted me to count. So I said, one. He goes, stop. He goes, that's it. He goes, you're looking at 8,000 ones. And so, I know that when you have the industry success and it equals this many people, that's however many ones that is. But I think just as much, man,
Wow.
there have been some songs that it didn't feel like they ever really saw the light of day. They were buried on a record, but you meet the one guy or the one lady who comes up, and you never expected the title of that song to come out of their mouth. And I just remember thinking well, maybe that's just for them, And that's for God. That is success. Because in the Lord, so it's easy to think from a music industry standpoint that success comes from a number, but one day on the blackboard of my heart, man, which that's back there somewhere, right? In my mind, if I close my eyes, I could see this blackboard. And it's like Jesus was writing this thing. He wrote this equation and he just said success equals, right? And he wanted me to try to fill in the other side of the equation. And so I said religious sounding things or whatever, but really he just filled it in. He wrote in the other side of success equals obedience. He's like, when I told you to do it, did you do it? That's success, And so I've always had a hard time with the technical side of, all the stuff you have to do to put a record out and the promotion and all of that stuff. And you're trying to get these numbers because I feel like it wars with the part of my heart that can just say, well, God, what is it that you say? Well, that's exactly what I want to do then, I also have been at the place, though, where I have demonized the industry side of it. And the Lord has shown me that industry is not evil. You know what I mean? It's just a vehicle,
right.
And only we say who our heart belongs to.
That's right.
Yeah. Really, the evil doesn't come from the industry. The evil comes when we give our heart over to thinking that what really matters is something to do with money or something to do with an amount of notoriety or success is equals fame or something. And it's like versus just being at that place where Jesus, long before he ever said, not my will, but yours be done, he'd been living that way his whole time on earth. When he talks to Philip, he says, man, Philip, if you saw me, you saw the Father, because I only do what I see the Father do. You know what I mean? I only say what I hear the Father say. Jesus had that success in his mind and in his heart all the time, was just doing what the Father said.
Man, I'm so glad you said the thing that you just said about the industry having a function. It has a role. It's just a vehicle. And I hear so many different people processing through and wrestling. It seems like it would be easier for an artist to just almost have an either or answer. It's either ministry or it's industry.
Yeah.
And I love the way that you just articulated it, because an industry doesn't have a soul. Like an industry can't have a calling. An artist does. The artist has the calling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that you said that. Like it's the person that can determine that, not the industry.
That's so right. And yes, and I know, because it can be so easy to hop on the bandwagon of demonizing the industry. Like it's a lot of times, though, that comes from people who were not successful in the industry too. So I don't want, you know what I mean? That was going to, that is the devil, man. That's because they didn't receive me or whatever. You know what I mean? But really, man, I have met so many people within the music industry who the jobs that they do, who people on the other side of it may never even know about that. They're following the calling of God, you know what I mean, in their life, and they do it that way. I've also met other people who God has not occurred to them in the process, you know what I mean? But it's like, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater,
Absolutely. Dude, this is something that since moving here, I've come to know, is that there are artists that have embraced the call of God on their life and are ministry minded. And then there's artists that are just using it like a career stepping stone, and maybe their sights are actually on pop or country that they start here.
Yeah.
Same thing with folks on the industry side behind the desk in the offices. I think of someone who is a hero of mine more and more, and that's Doris.
Oh my gosh. Doris Bradshaw, man, that lady, I'm telling you, that is, Jesus with whatever kind of glasses it is that she's wearing. You know what I mean? I love that lady so much. And man, she has been like the love of God in the lives of artists, in the lives of, people who work at the label, man, she's incredible, man. So shout out to Doris. We all love you. We all love you. And in a business and even in a building, at the record label where, jobs have turned over and turned over and turned over and turned over. And Doris is still there, man. And she's just serving faithfully, man. She's the heart of God, man, to so many of us there.
Seriously.
I love it.
I mean, one time I was with a whole group of songwriters. We were in Dallas at this upper room writing camp, and Jonathan Mason was there, and he was supposed to get up and say something. And I don't know what this epiphany was he had this one moment, but there's probably a room of 40 people, just random track people, lyric people from the church, leaders, whatever. And Jonathan gets up with the microphone and he's like, guys, I know I'm supposed to say something, but God put it in my mind to just call Doris and ask her to pray over us. And so he calls Doris on the microphone, says, Doris, you have a minute? And he just says, hey, can I just put the phone to the microphone and just let you pray over our day, pray over our room? And bro, by the end of that prayer, there was not a dry eye in that room, feeling so covered and cared for. And I kind of felt like I needed an altar call.
Dude,
I was like, I think I need to get saved right now.
Bro, Sam, that blesses me so much, man, because I love her so much. And I love old Jonathan Mason so much too, man. What a good man. You know, and indeed, as we're talking about these things and we're wrestling between the heart of like, what is business? What is ministry? And it's like, and it's blurred sometimes. I think though that the right thing is to war with it. I think that's the healthy thing, right? If you just give up and like give yourself over to the work of it or whatever, versus like the heart of what's behind it, what this vehicle of an industry can give wings to in a way. It's like, it's that tension that keeps us, I think, in a healthy place in our walk with God. I mean, right?
It isn't so much of life like that, where it's nuanced. Like, it's so much easier to find an either or a good guy, bad guy, or whatever. Yeah. I mean, even coming from 17 years as a staff member in ministry, you know, that's another whole conversation that I'm having often with folks. It's just like, they're like, yeah, this American institution we call church, it's not the New Testament thing.
Oh, dude,
and,
yes.
You know what I mean? Like, we just need to burn it to the ground. It's like, I don't know if that's the answer.
Come on, dude. Right, bro. And it's that tension there too. Cause there is the devil in it. You know what I mean? I see it, dude. Like when I was talking about Ben Fuller ministering and just seeing God alive in him right now and knowing the day that the family he was staying with invited him to church. And then he went and had this time at the altar with Jesus. And then now so it's easy to be like, you know, it's just messier than that. The whole thing is just messier than that, you know?
Dude,
and we got to be willing to wade through that. And the only way to wade through it is with Jesus, though. You know, to say, you know, if it's just become merch tables, then turn them all over, you know what I mean? And do your real thing in us. But at the same time, show us how to run the merch table, because we got to have gas money to get to the next venue, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well, dude, you said it earlier, success equals obedience.
That's it, dude. Did he say it? And what did he say? And then did we do it? You know what, to me also, I just thought of this in it, that because we're trying to make it this like either or thing, but it really is both, because it is, I mean, music industry does give a way for it to go. But, you know, Matthew 6, when, you know, Jesus says, seek first the kingdom and his rightness, walking in obedience with him, right living with him, right relationship with him, then all the rest of this is going to fall. So then that makes room for music industry and everything else. But he just belongs first. Man, I heard him say this to me one time. He said, you know, there's only one first, right? First. He said, but there's a first in every moment, you know? And that as we're following him through this thing, that's what we just need, is we need the voice of the Lord, and we need the peace of God to follow through all of the nuances that you're talking about, you know, in the journey through the music industry part of it, you know?
Is there anything about Christian music right now, and you've been doing it a while, where you've seen the changes, but is there anything that makes you excited about where it's headed?
Oh, dude, yes. I can't shut up about Ben Fuller right now. You know what I mean? And when he, like, literally, I heard his new record, and I'm not trying to just be the evangelist of Ben Fuller. It's just like what's going on in my life right now. You should have him on here, man, sometime. I'm telling you, you'd be so blessed by what he would share.
I would love it.
Ben's new record. And what I loved is it's like my favorite worship record and my favorite Tim McGraw record all in one, dude. It's like, it is a bona fide country music record, but it is like full of the gospel. I'm telling you, from beginning to end, and full of a journey towards maturity in Jesus. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I have not been excited about a record like that in Christian music in a while, man. The other thing I'm so stoked about right now, though, so my kids are what keep me connected to what is younger in Christian music. So for years now, my little girl Naomi has been just a huge Brandon Lake fan, you know? And so she always brings me the latest Brandon Lake song to listen to. And then, of course, when we had toured with Chris Tomlin years ago, Phil Wickham was out on that tour. And so Brandon Lake and Phil Wickham have this tour together called Summer Worship Nights, right? And dude, I went there and I'm like, man, can you really retain the unadulterated heart for ministry in an entire arena full of people? Yes, you can. Because, dude, from beginning to end, I mean, in arenas every night, it's 14,000 people, 16,000 people. And, dude, I watched Phil Wickham get up there and just have a heart for Jesus that went out everywhere. Brandon Lake, I mean, he looks so cool doing it because he's all muscled up with tattoos and like hair and all this business, you know what I mean? But, dude, it was about Jesus from the beginning of it to the end of it. There's the most clear gospel call in it, man, and it was so good. Man, they're seeing miracles break out like we had seen in these little rooms on the byways for years. But, man, in arenas. Another one is Forrest Frank, dude. And, like, so my son Eli has been a fan of Surfaces for a long time. And I always thought, man, it's got a cool vibe to it. It feels good. And, but it was never necessarily like just about Jesus, Then all of a sudden, Forrest Frank starts coming out with these songs that are it is as gospel centric as it could be. It can't be more about Jesus than what his songs are saying. You know what I mean? Incredible, dude. For a long time, I just felt like I was worried. I'm like, well, what's next? And is it just more, people who've really loved the fact that, that you can make a record and have a big tour? Man, this stuff is about Jesus, right? I can't speak for it behind the scenes, but I just don't think that Jesus would endorse what's going on in there. And I've been places where people talk about it being about Jesus, but something stinks. And it just feels like it's real to me, man. Same thing. Forrest Frank, I listened to him on YouTube at Liberty Convocation, and I felt like the guy who was interviewing him was wanting like a more profound answer, but he keeps giving these like Abrahamic kind of like simple answers. Well, God told me to lay down music, so I did. Then God gave me a couple songs and I put them out. They blew up, but that's not how I'm deciding what I do next. If Jesus says lay it down, then I'm done. And I'm like, man, that's it, Forrest Frank. Come on, dude. Come on. You know what I mean? That's it. He's just listening to Jesus and just doing what he says. Success equals obedience, right? But the thing is, obedience can also look like bow in an entire, arena too, which is so great, man. Because I love it, man. Because every night with a restored heart, I'm seeing Jesus show up in these little rooms that we play in. 800 people, 1,000 people, 1,200 people, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? But then I see him in the arena too. He's everywhere, man. He's anywhere somebody will say yes. You know what I mean? And that's it, dude. Forrest Frank. So my son's getting ready to go out to a couple of those shows. And I just love that that's what he's going to experience, man. This young man who's up there just being so vulnerable, man. Oh, one more name. Hulvey, dude. Do you see this kid? Oh my gosh. Dude, I saw him open up on summer worship nights and he's singing these songs. Glory to the Father. You deserve the praise. Take me. I'm like, they're having a meeting with Jesus in this moment. There have it. Yeah, exactly, dude. And he's having the time of his life, but he's literally just pointing people to Jesus, dude. And I'm like, yeah, I got a lot of hope right now for what's going on, and for as all the other things. So I've seen for every one of those, I've seen, 2,500 chasing something and they put a Jesus sticker on it, but it's not that, you know what I mean? And everybody's seen that. Everybody's sick to death of that. Right. But it's like, I see a few, and right now those are like rising to the top. Isn't that so cool, man?
It is so cool. I mean, I love every single one of those names may have been the ones that I would have said too. And that my kids are into the same ones and my wife is into them. And I mean, our whole house is always blasting and dancing. And yeah, man, this is why I believe in Christian music. Ministry doesn't have to just have a sound that's narrow. God raises up people that know what they're doing to speak his spirit, bring in the word to stadiums full of people. He's been doing it for a long, long, long time.
And it doesn't have to be boxed in. One of my most recent favorite things too is seeing Jelly Roll, man. First of all, it blessed me that a big brother is up there doing it, which he's like shrinking by the day or whatever. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable because Jelly Roll is becoming skinny. All I know is like, man, I heard something in his music way before he and Brandon Lake ever had a song together. But I watched the interaction between he and Brandon Lake, and Brandon Lake never in any way stiff-armed him. You know what I mean? And it just reminded me of the love of God, how inclusive the love of God is, dude, and how Jelly Roll is like maybe he's rough around the edges to some people or whatever, but he in their interview together said like, man, if you listen to an interview I had 5 years ago, he's like, I don't sound like the same person. He goes, maybe 5 years from now, I'm not going to say, and I'm like, man, that better be all of us. And if we think that any of us are anything other than a work in progress, man, that, so I'm so excited about what Jesus is doing in music, in out of the box ways and all kinds of things, man. I love it.
Man, I'm with you, man. It's an exciting time. We said we were going to come back to talking about Jay.
And then Jay, so he's my little brother, played bass for Big Daddy Weave. Man, was a leader in our little group, in our little culture. Yeah, he passed at the beginning of 2022 after a long health journey, and it was during COVID, and it was like there was a COVID element that was responsible for it. It was kind of like the end of a long journey, though. And yeah, we have missed him. And the past 3 years, I mean, I have really, oh man, it brought me to such a low point, man. But there's a crazy thing when I had this meeting with Jesus in my RV, it's redneck holy ground, right? It's like, I really feel like when Jesus gave me a new heart, it made Jay feel close again. And my dad and my mom and the people that I miss. The Bible talks about us being surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And I feel that surroundedness now, So I miss him, but in a way, he feels closer than he has in a long time, in a way. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, after losing him, how did being on the road or continuing to lead people in worship feel during that? I mean, did that ever feel impossible?
Yes. And to the point that I thought it was just, we're counting down the days till it was done. Now, I was begging the Lord that it would be done. It would affect me in terrible ways, just looking where he should be and he's not there. And we're in a photo shoot, which is already fat people's least favorite day of the entire year. You're just thinking about, this is not going to look great. The fact that it's a picture of me right now. And then the fact that Jay was not there at one point in the photo shoot, literally, I just was like, I can't do this anymore. And just walked out, cause I was hurting so bad. Yeah. It was absolutely awful. And I would just share that, this is very terrible. I know I'm going to see him again. And so I'm holding on, but I don't, it hurts. It hurts so bad, and it did. Yeah.
How do you think grief changes our relationship with God?
Man, whenever he was gone, I didn't know what to do with it. Because, dude, for the 7 years prior to that, or a little bit longer, because it was like there was this overlap. 7 years of miracles. We were just seeing God. Sam, I don't want to go on a tangent, but it was like that could be a whole other podcast of just things that I've seen Jesus do. It's just like the Bible. The Bible has not gone away. Nothing's changed. When you see the book of Acts, that's the same Jesus doing stuff. That's the same Holy Spirit doing stuff today. And we just saw every day. It just became common almost. Just we'd hear of some kind of brain tumor that was gone. We'd hear of some kind of emotional healing that had happened, some kind of miracle all the time. And then when I was begging Jesus to do that in my brother's life and I didn't see it, I didn't know what to do with that information. You know what I mean? I didn't know what to do with that. It just broke something in me. And it left me in this kind of in-between sort of state, not knowing how to ask God. And, I'll still do the things that I knew to do in my mind, but I just felt disassociated from it, in my heart. I just felt empty. It's like my guts had just been kicked out, And so I, except for in the midst of it, not in the big breakthrough way, but in the undeniably present way, God is still right there. I'm like, well, if you're right there, why don't you do what I'm asking you to do? And God's like, I think you've got this thing backwards. I'm the one who says, and you do what I'm asking you to do, right? Remember, we figured out how that works better that way, right? But it's when you're hurt, that's when the enemy wants to come in and be like, dude, you want to see what God didn't do. And you're back to the garden at that point. Did God really say that and he's always just trying to prove why God must be holding out on you, somehow. You know what I mean? When you're talking about the voice of religion earlier, dude, in that grief, that's what all of a sudden you have this preconceived notion of this is how things are supposed to be. And when that gets chucked out the window, it's what do you do? Well, I'll tell you who's still there is not your religious concept, but the person of God, And I sure wish I could snap my fingers and make him do what I want him to do, but that's just higher than my pay grade. You know what I mean? So we just had to wait. And man, one of the most freeing things, though, concerning grief was when I opened up this book from a ministry called Grief Share. And to this day, I have never been to a Grief Share meeting, but they sent me some books. And when I opened up this book, and literally it felt like that book read me. And it just said, there's no right or wrong way to do this. Nobody else had the relationship with the person that you lost that you had. So nobody else is going to do this the same way that you will. And you just need to give yourself the space to do that. Mm. And there was a time when I didn't feel like I had any other answer except for just knowing that God was going to somehow work it out. You know, I didn't know when, and I honestly didn't have a whole lot of hope, you know, but the Lord just walked us through that season, man, in grace, you know, just giving you what you need for every day, dude. When days I would swear I don't have enough for this day. You got to let me out of this. You know, you got to let me out of this. I never had like suicidal thoughts, but I had thoughts of, I wish I could unexist is what I wished. You know, I wish I was reading in the story of Job, and Job said something like that. He's like, I cursed the day I was born. Mm-hmm. You know, I wish I'd never been born like that. I had those kind of thoughts, you know, but then you know what, after you go through that a little while, you know, I found out the whole world wasn't hinging on what I believed or what I didn't think I believed. God was still there in the midst of all of it. And he was seeing me through in ways that I didn't even know how to ask for until we made it to the other side of this thing where he just said, man, you've been living out of a broken heart and I want to give you a new heart. And when he gave me a new heart, I feel like that changed my perspective, you know? And, man, it doesn't mean I don't miss my brother. I don't miss my mom or my dad or, you know, but Jesus gave me a new heart. And a thing that it changed the most is when I see people go through what we're going through, that changed my outlook on them. I feel like in my life, I've said like a lot of really stupid and religious and overly spiritual sounding things to people who really were just hurting. And what they really needed in that moment was not, you know, some wise guy. Is what they needed is a big hug. And they just needed somebody to cry with them, you know? And I think I'm that guy now. You know, I wasn't that guy, but I'm that guy now. That's what's changed the most, I think.
Man, that's so hopeful. Everyone's dealing with some sort of loss.
Yes. But Jesus doesn't give up on us. There's a song, I guess the song was written by Pierce Pettis, and it's called God Believes in You. And I think, you know, because when we're not believing in God, sometimes I think that God's still believing in us. God knows things about us because he made us, right? And he's like, I'm not letting you give up right now. And he puts up with all the shaking your, you know, fist in the air at him and all that stuff. And he's like, yeah. Even Jesus' confession on the cross, he's like, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? And I think that's still his response to us because he does know what's up, even when we don't know what's up. And he puts up with us, man, and he gets us through it. And he's still the healer and he's still the restorer. You may not be seeing it today, but hang in there, man, because he's not done with the story yet, dude.
If you could go back and talk to 25 years ago, Mike.
Oh, geez.
Just starting out, what would you say to him?
Much like I would say to the Mike that's been rambling on and on and on in this episode for you, is like, this guy's an idiot. You know what I mean?
It's kind of the opposite of what I've been thinking, man. This is gold.
But you know what I mean? It's so rambly and it's so like all of these things, man, you know? I would say, man, it's not on you. It's not on your shoulders, dude. Because I've walked like thinking that like I've got to somehow hold this thing up. If I don't hold this thing up, then it's not going to happen. That was never how it was. You know what I mean? Jesus has been carrying us through the whole thing, you know? You remember the thing you used to see on every grandma's like bathroom wall or whatever, footprints or whatever, you know?
That was on our wall growing
100%. It was on everybody's wall, dude. It was like, dude, even people were like, how'd that get there? It's like in every bathroom that I've ever been in.
There's a grandma in heaven just distributing those out in oak frames in cursive font.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly it.
It's
That's
in every
exactly
church
it.
bookstore.
It's it. And the one odd like painting of that dude like praying over his food, that old dude. It looks like Obi-Wan Kenobi like praying over his food, you know, and
There's some serious like 80s church PTSD happening to our listeners right now. And I think that might be one of them.
I know, dude. I know. It was in every house. You're like, where did we get that? I don't know. It must have come with the house. There's like, you know, standard issue. If
And
you
it
go to
comes in your-
church, they're like, congratulations, welcome to the faith. Don't forget to hang up your painting.
Dude, not just as an artist, but as just a guy, as a Jesus follower. What do you want your legacy to be?
Legacy, dude. I don't know, man. I don't know that I want a legacy. I don't know if that's, you know what I mean? If there is something I left behind, I hope it's just the part of him that stood out in it. You know? I think, cause you know, it's like, I know what the story will be. And yet again, Michael screwed it up. You know what I mean? And then Jesus, you know, that's the thing. It's just him, dude, you know, cause all I've ever done is find some other way to screw it up. And all he's ever done is come to the rescue. That religion in me for so many years, like always like braced for like the combat boot of heaven to like squish me. And, you know, but all I've ever found is him still rooting for the part that he said I didn't get wrong. You know what I mean?
Wow.
One time I was in front of the Lord and I was just like so bummed out over myself, like mortally bummed out over me. God, I just am disgusted with me, you know, and was his response. He said, you didn't get it all wrong. And I was like, that's who he is? Man, I can write songs about that guy, or all the rest of the time we're writing songs, you know. He surely is kind to me, you know. He didn't have to be, but he sure is, you know. And I think that's the whole story I'm leaving behind is just like, you know, Jesus, what he did, you know, it's like, that's the story. You know what I mean? My ability to screw it up, his way greater ability to make intercession for me. You know what I mean? Yes, scripture, he says he lives to make intercession. I'm like, praise God. That's who he is. He's like our, you know, he's our unending like defense lawyer, you know, in heaven, man. Isn't that amazing? That's who he is. And so then we gotta learn how to be that for each other, right?
Wow. Okay, last question. If you had 60 seconds to speak directly to the next generation, what would you say?
Oh man, I know this sounds like a cop-out. It's Jesus, dude. He's the fulfillment of everything that you're looking for. All the things that you think are going to make you happy on the inside, all the things going to make you feel like you've arrived or whatever, that is all nothing apart from him. It's nothing. You're chasing the wind, dude. Like Ecclesiastes says, if you're just trying to earn the thing. But when you're in league with him and you're living in the way where you're like, well, what do you say, Jesus? And then you get that word from him and then you're like, me too. Right? There's a fulfillment in walking in the purpose that Jesus has for you. Not just your dreams, but the dreams that Jesus would bring to you that are for more than you. Because that's how you can tell it's kingdom, is it's not just about you. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about in the like the false self way of like, no, whatever, you know. But it's like, we're like, well, Jesus, what would you have me do? And then walking in the purpose of that thing. Man, there is a wonderful fulfillment and a peace because it's not on you to deliver it. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's what I'll say to them, man. Let it be about Jesus and let him come in and really show you why you were even made, you know? Yeah.
Gold.
Yeah.
Before we awesome. Well, Mike Weaver, thank you for coming in today. Thanks for your time.
Oh, man, thanks for having me on, dude. And for all the Coke Zero.